Hey everyone, and welcome to the 2018 Android Developer Summit here at the historic Computer History Museum in California. This is an event for developers by developers with tons of in-depth content and, most importantly, direct access to the engineers that actually build Android. In fact, we have so many of them here this week that I'm pretty sure Android development is going to stop. In the audience, we have attendees from over 70 countries, both in person and on the live stream. We're glad to have you all with us here today. Now, speaking of history, we're about to celebrate our 10th anniversary of Android. And in fact, it was about 10 years ago that the very first customers were unboxing their G1 devices. And CNET's review at the time said, thanks to the openness of the operating system, there's huge potential for the G1 and any Android devices after it to become powerful mini computers as developers create more applications for Google Android. The G1 did OK, but it's what came next and what you built on Android that fundamentally changed the mobile industry. 10 years ago, the mobile landscape looked very different. Mobile platforms at the time were not friendly to developers, with severely limited APIs and tools. But even more problematic was that each OS required completely different and non-transferable skills. So it was simply impossible to build a mobile app at scale. Now, at the same time, off in a corner of Google in Building 44, a small team of dedicated engineers were quietly working on what at the time seemed like a crazy project. The idea was bold, to build a new open-source operating system that any device maker could use with a powerful SDK that put developers first. And to many at the time, this seemed like a harebrained idea. What did Google know about telecommunications, and how could it possibly influence this established industry? It was an intense time for the Android team. And to add to the drama, while getting close to launching version 1.0, Apple announced the iPhone. And it looked awesome. They brought their A game. So what were we going to do? Well, we had two hardware programs at the time. The Sooner device with a physical keyboard, and the Dream device, which included a touchscreen. So we had no choice but to accelerate the schedule of the Dream. And we felt like we had a window to deliver on our vision of the smartphone before it was too late. We were racing to launch, and the team was incredibly motivated. So we started a tradition of putting on a huge breakfast on Sundays in Building 44 for anyone who wanted to come in. Bacon, eggs, pastries, you name it. And it was super productive. No meetings, just coding, and in parallel, bug triaging and release planning. Clearly, these cats do not know about Android Studio's code completion. In the morning, you'd have a previous week's version of Android, but by the evening, some amazing new piece of functionality would appear, like the notification shade or a new home screen. It was like watching the OS come alive before your eyes. Now, one of the big challenges in creating a new platform is the bootstrapping problem. So how do you motivate anyone to write an application for a platform with 0 users? And why would a user buy a phone with no applications? So we did two things. First, the core Android team wrote mobile app versions of Google's desktop services, everything from Gmail to Maps to YouTube. And it worked out well because it let us experience our APIs and framework at the same time as developing the applications. And it's something that I like to encourage we do to this day. But to make the platform shine, we needed apps from across the industry. So we launched an early look SDK in November 2007 and announced the Android Developer Challenge with $20 million to be awarded to the top 100 apps. And developers around the world responded. And by April 2008, just 6 months later, we had over 2,000 submissions. And it was amazing, given that there were no physical devices to use for development, just the emulator. The apps were surprisingly diverse, from games to social networking, and from utilities to productivity tools. And location and GPS were the top used features, along with camera and media and messaging. So it really showed this pent-up demand for developers to be creative on mobile and to use features that were up to now locked down to them. Some of the winning apps are still around today, like Life 360, and several paved the way for apps and businesses that would come years later. The T-Mobile G1 launched in October 2008 with Android Market. This was the predecessor to Google Play, and it had just over 50 apps on day one. 1 week later, we opened the store for developer uploads. And advanced capabilities like in-app purchases and direct carrier billing and just broader country support were yet to be built. The following 10 years was one of rapid evolution. In the early days, we were doing 2 big releases a year. And our lead program manager at the time made this offhand suggestion that we codename the releases after desserts in alphabetical order. And that idea stuck, and here's what came next. So Android 1.5 Cupcake, we were eating a lot of cupcakes at the time, added virtual keyboard support. So we'd no longer require that physical keyboard like on the first G1 device. We also added the copy and paste clipboard. Android 1.6 Donut followed, introducing support for different screen densities and sizes, thereby laying the foundation for a variety of phone sizes and form factors that were going to come a couple of years later. And that was Diane Hackborn's idea. She's generally about 5 years ahead of the rest of us. Android 2 Eclair introduced powerful speech recognition and changed driving forever with Google Maps navigation. Android 2.2 Froyo took the speech capabilities to the next level with voice actions, which lets you perform key functions on your phone, like getting directions and taking notes and setting alarms. And that, of course, was the precursor to today's Google Assistant. Android 2.3 Gingerbread was in many ways the first mainstream version of Android, and it was the one that started to get serious scale with hardware manufacturers. With Android 3 Honeycomb, we added support for tablets with the Hollow theme. But now we had a problem because phones were shipping on Gingerbread and tablets were shipping on Honeycomb. So we merged both form factors with Android 4 Ice Cream Sandwich. And in that release, we also introduced more intuitive navigation with the use of gestures to dismiss notifications and recent apps. And that release also saw the arrival of quick settings. Android Jelly Bean was an incremental release that included Project Butter to optimize graphics to get a buttery smooth V-Sync locked animations. And smooth animations are something that I personally obsess about to this day. Android KitKat came with Project Svelte that reduced the memory footprint to 512 megabytes. And it also included DSP offloaded OK Google Hot Word. I heard the beep. It works. Android 5 Lollipop followed and was the mother of all releases. It brought material design to Android, giving it an entirely new look and feel. And so between Project Butter and material design, we changed the narrative on Android, giving it a beautiful, refined user experience. Lollipop also introduced support for new categories of computing, including wearables and auto and TV. And Lollipop was the first release with enterprise features, such as the work profile, which we've been building on ever since. Lollipop was such an epic release that we frankly needed to spend our energy in Android 6 Marshmallow on improving quality. We also made a major overhaul of privacy in that release with the introduction of runtime permissions. Android 7 Nougat brought significant new capabilities, including multi-window support, virtual reality, and new emoji. Android 8 Oreo introduced the Android Go profile for entry-level smartphones. And it also came with Project Treble, a massive overhaul of the hardware interface layer to help both speed up and reduce the cost of doing upgrades. Finally, this year, we launched Android Pie, which starts our journey on an AI-first experience. It also contains tons of UI improvements and simplifications and introduces the concept of digital well-being. So that was a very quick trip down memory lane. I think it's pretty incredible to see just how far we have all come in a decade of smartphone development. And while we're solving different problems today, it's clear the principles upon which we built Android are just as true today as they were 10 years ago. So principles like giving developers a powerful SDK so their apps can run everywhere, or open source code to enable device makers from entry level to high end, and an ever-improving UX that delights users around the world. So what does the next 10 years have in store for Android? Well, I obviously don't have a crystal ball, but there are 3 trends that I want to call out that I think are important. 1, smartphones are getting smarter. 2, multi-screen computing is becoming pervasive with exciting new form factors on the horizon. And 3, our phones are going to be able to help us with safety and digital well-being. So first, our smartphones are about to get a whole lot smarter. AI will enable your phone to get to know you better, to adapt to you, and to become more personal. And you can already see glimpses of this in Android Pie running on Google Pixel. For example, the screen brightness automatically learns your preferences. And the next apps to launch are predicted with high accuracy to save you time. And the camera is able to recognize objects in real time with Google Lens. And the phone can screen calls with an intelligent AI. For developers wanting to tap into AI, we announced ML Kit earlier this year. So whether you're new or experienced in machine learning, ML Kit enables everything from image labeling to face detection and more. ML Kit builds on Android's Neural Networks API, which provides hardware acceleration via DSPs and net neural processing units, or NPUs. And it's supported on the latest flagship devices from Huawei, Xiaomi, OnePlus, Google, and more. NN API boosts performance considerably. So for example, MobileNet, which is a family of vision models for TensorFlow, runs 8 times faster using NN API on the Qualcomm Snapdragon 845 compared to the CPU. And you can expect NPUs to become standard on all smartphone silicon in the next few years. The second trend goes beyond phones. We're investing heavily in a multi-screen experience. This means a great Android experience across TVs, wearables, cars, and Chromebooks. And we're seeing user growth in all of these form factors. For example, user engagement on Android TV has grown to 3 hours per device per day. And this year, Android Auto has seen 250% user growth, and our partners launched 19 new watches running Wear OS. And just when you thought you'd seen everything in phones, we're about to see a whole new form factor idea from Android device makers, Foldables. They take advantage of new flexible display technology, so the screen can literally bend and fold. And you can think of the device really as both a phone and a tablet. And broadly, we're seeing 2 variants. There's the 2-screen devices and the 1-screen devices. When folded, it looks like a phone, so it fits in your pocket or purse. And the defining feature for this form factor is something we call screen continuity. For example, you might start a video on the folded smaller screen while on the go, but later sit down and want a more immersive experience. So you can simply unfold the device to get a larger tablet-sized screen. And as you unfold, the app seamlessly transfers to the bigger screen without missing a beat. It's an exciting concept, and we expect to see foldable devices from several Android manufacturers. In fact, we're already working closely with Samsung on a new device they plan to launch early next year, which you'll hear about later today. For our part, we're enhancing Android to take advantage of this new form factor with as little work as possible from you. For example, we're adding resizable flags so your app can respond to folding and unfolding. And we expect to see a lot of innovation in foldable hardware over the next few years, and we're excited to see what you come up with. The third trend is safety and well-being. Smartphones have gone from non-existent to indispensable in just 10 years. In fact, the very idea of leaving your home without your smartphone literally sends shivers down people's spines. And at Google, we like to build products that give you utility, whether that's putting the world's information at your fingertips, or navigating you to where you need to be, or translating a foreign language. But beyond utility, we feel a responsibility to your safety and well-being. As one example, more than 80% of emergency calls originate from mobile phones. However, locating these phones in an emergency can be challenging since traditional emergency location technologies often fail indoors or have a radius that's too large. In a serious emergency, minutes can mean the difference between life and death. We launched Android's emergency location service, ELS, in 2016, and just recently announced bringing it to the US. With ELS, when you dial 911 or your country's equivalent, your location is accurately calculated through a combination of Wi-Fi, cell towers, and GPS signals and sent directly to the emergency provider. ELS is built into 99% of Android phones all the way back to version 4. And we're continuing to look at new ways to help improve your safety with lots of ideas in the works. Now, having a smartphone with you all day is awesome, but we also want to make sure you're in control of your digital well-being. And we know from our research that 72% of people are concerned with the amount of time they spend on tech. So at Android Pie this year, we introduced new tools to let you control your usage with things like app limits, grayscale wind down, and do not disturb that blocks all distractions. Of course, like most features, we've added developer hooks, so you can now tell if do not disturb is enabled, or if your app is temporarily limited, and you can implement an intent filter so your app has its own usage dashboard. We're continuing to invest in this space with lots of enhancements planned. OK, so let's wrap up. Android, from the beginning, was conceived as a platform built around developers. We poured a ton of energy into growing this ecosystem and community from the ground up. I see our developer tools and frameworks as living, breathing things, so we're constantly striving to be better. And in return, you've been an amazing community, building incredible apps and services that enable and delight users the world over. We simply could not do this without you, so thank you. So with that, let's get down to business. I'm excited to hand over to Steph and team to talk about some of the recent work we've been doing to increase developer productivity on Android. Thank you.
Zomato was started as an app which lets you browse digital menus. Now we are this big food tech company that is operational in 24 countries. More than 150 million users visit the platform every month. We are available in 10 languages. And on the delivery side, we have a fleet of around 60,000 delivery riders.
After all the buzz in the developer community about Kotlin, I was intrigued by how Kotlin was able to uphold the object-oriented paradigm and solve many of the architectural flaws in the compile time itself. I almost instantly recognized that Kotlin will enable me to develop more architecturally sound applications. Almost all the new SDKs and APIs that Google is releasing right now has Kotlin support. If you convert a Java class to Kotlin, there will be about 15 to 20% decrease in the line of code. But if you take data classes, there is a drastic improvement of about 55% decrease in the lines of code. Switching to Kotlin is efficient and really exciting. At Zomato, now almost every new feature is being developed in Kotlin. I would recommend switching to Kotlin because of its interoperability with Java. With recent updates, Android Studio has drastically improved Kotlin support. It is almost frictionless.
Hey everyone, I'm Steph. I'm on the Android team, and Dave is right. Developers influence the platform. You're not on top of it, you're a part of what we do. Kotlin's a great example. It's not a Google-designed language. It was not maybe the obvious choice, but it was the best choice, as you made clear. We could see developers voting with their feet in the adoption in the months before we announced support. Like Kotlin, our developer investments come down to two things at heart. Number one, your feedback. And number two, Google engineers using Android and thinking, how do I make something people will love? So the past several years, we've been investing deeply in Android's developer experience. It's been guided by your feedback. We'll talk about that. We're also going to talk about some new things that we have to share. So each year, we've been investing. Let's start with IDEs. In 2013, we first demoed Android Studio at I/O. It was a new IDE built on IntelliJ, designed to accelerate Android development. Over 5 years, we've progressively built it out, based on the features you asked for most. Completely new emulators, a new compile toolchain, profilers, mobile layout tools like constraint layout, better C++, inspectors for things like layouts and app size, and tools for every dessert release. We also wanted to add the little things that make a big difference, whether that's Maven integration to lint checks. Second, APIs. In 2016, Diane Hackborn wrote a famous post on app architecture saying, we're not opinionated, to which she replied, please be opinionated. So we created architecture components, and we've refined them with feedback over many EAPs and expanded them now into Android Jetpack. We see Jetpack as the future of our mobile APIs. They are opinionated and easy to use, intuitive APIs that work on 95% of devices. We want them to integrate seamlessly with Android's core primitives, so you get the best possible combination of efficiency every day and also deep control. Expect to see us continue expanding Jetpack every year. Third was languages. In 2017, we announced support for Kotlin. We've added since then IDE support, API support, docs, samples, and moved it into the Kotlin Foundation, working with the wonderful language authors. Fourth, app delivery. So developers have always loved the Play Store for the fast delivery times. That's great when you want to launch and innovate fast. But you told us app size is way too big. And that really hurts installs. So this year, we announced the app bundle and dynamic delivery. Developers using this are slimming down apps worldwide, with most apps saving up to and over 30%. Finally, security. Android was built with security in mind from day one, with application sandboxing. As Android's matured, we've expanded our mobile security services. Today, 99% of abusive apps are taken down before anyone can install. And after you install, we use Google Play Protect to scan over 50 billion apps per day. It's every app on every connected device. When we find a potentially harmful app, we disable it or we remove it. But let's say you're doing everything right, and you accidentally get caught in this net without someone to talk to. This is a place I think we need to do better. We need to make it much easier for you to reach us in these cases. So our engineering director will be here tomorrow at the fireside chat to talk with you about it and get your feedback. Now, another way we protect the ecosystem is moving apps to target current APIs, like API 26 by November. And you told us, OK, makes sense, but please give us a long notice period. So that's why we gave almost a year's notice. We think of you as a part of how we work, whether it's early ideas to advisory boards, reading Reddit threads, beta, and iterating after launch. We really want to be trustworthy, and we've definitely heard about things that you've loved, like architecture components and Kotlin. Sometimes we have underestimated the time it takes to get things right, like Instant Run. What we've heard is you want from us open sharing, so you can see things that are early, as long as we're clear this is early, as well as things that are ready for production. So that's what we'll do today. Let's shift gears. Today, I'm going to share a range of early ideas all the way to stable releases. I want to walk you through two big themes for Android development. First, foundations, using languages and libraries to work smarter. Second, productivity, using mobile IDEs, console, and distribution to develop easier, have higher quality apps, and to grow adoption. We're going to start with foundations and Kotlin. Throughout, I wanted you to hear from some of the people who have been instrumental in these projects. So we're going to start with someone who was key in the Kotlin decision. He's a huge contributor to Android, both while he was in the community, now on the Google team. It's a privilege to turn things over to Jake Wharton.
Hey, everyone. So I'm Jake. I'm part of the team working on Kotlin for Android. And it's been 18 months since Steph was on stage at Google I/O just down the road from here, announcing that Kotlin would be supported as a new first-class language. This was something that had never been done in the history of Android. But based on positive feedback from developers like you and the growing adoption that we've seen in apps, it's clear that this was the right choice. According to GitHub's yearly stats, Kotlin is the #1 fastest-growing language in terms of contributors. Stack Overflow's yearly survey places Kotlin as #2 most loved programming language by those who participated. For Android, 46% of pro Android developers are now using Kotlin to build their apps. This was according to a survey of those visiting developer.android.com. In October, we had 118,000 7-day active projects using Kotlin and Android Studio. This is based on those who opt in to reporting analytics. That's a 10x increase from the numbers last year. Now, when Kotlin support was announced, there already were a bunch of apps that were using it in the Play Store. And that group continues to grow and includes new apps like WeChat, Amazon Kindle, and Twitter. Just prior to Google I/O this year, the Kotlin language moved into the Kotlin Foundation. And we're fortunate to partner with JetBrains, who spend a tremendous amount of resources on improving the language itself. Just last week, they released the newest version of Kotlin, 1.3, with new language features, APIs, bug fixes, and performance improvements. For example, inline classes, which in most cases don't actually allocate like a normal class would unless they're boxed. For constrained devices that we target, avoiding allocation while still retaining type safety is a big win. The Kotlin standard library now includes a set of unsigned numbers, such as uint, ubyte, and ulong, and these are built using that inline class feature. And in addition to Kotlin code targeting Android or the JVM, you can now target JavaScript, or now native code as well. This unlocks the possibility of reusing parts of your code base on more platforms. And finally, the long-awaited coroutine support is now stable in 1.3, which is a lighter weight version of threading. The language and library support for coroutines combine and simplify how you do asynchronous operations or perform concurrent work, things that are essential to every Android app. And as I'm sure you are, we're looking forward to using these new Kotlin features in the Kotlin-specific APIs that we provide. So far, the majority of those have been through the Kotlin extensions, which are part of Jetpack. This year at I/O, we announced that the Kotlin extensions were expanding from just core KTX to 7 KTX libraries for common artifacts that you use from Jetpack, like fragments, SQLite, lifecycle. And all of these are now available as stable releases. Since then, though, as new APIs are added to existing libraries or new libraries are added to Jetpack, the KTX extensions are being built alongside. So things like navigation, paging, and slices are all new libraries that each have extensions being built with them. And we're starting to go beyond just providing extensions. So Lifecycle is going to support a coroutine scope, so you can easily launch coroutines and have automatic cancellation. And Work Manager will be offering a work object based on coroutines. And we're always on the lookout for integrations like these that provide more close interoperability. If you want to get started with, say, coroutines on Android, there's a new code lab that you can work through. It covers performing asynchronous work, testing of coroutines, and the Work Manager integration. And since Kotlin isn't just a language for building Android apps, Google Cloud Platform now offers samples, tutorials, and their own code lab, so you can build your application backend using Kotlin. And finally, new Udacity courses are available in preview today, which cover app development entirely in Kotlin. And they use both Jetpack and popular third-party libraries. To speak more about Jetpack as a whole, I'd like to turn it over to Romain.
Hi, I'm Romain, and I work on the Android framework team. So a few months ago, we announced Jetpack, the next generation of Android tools and APIs to accelerate Android application development. Jetpack builds on the foundations that we laid out with support library and app architecture components, but we also add new tools and libraries to the mix. Jetpack is about writing less code and targeting more devices. All Jetpack libraries are backwards compatible and target up to 95% of existing Android devices. We first started running early access programs on architecture components about 2 years ago, and they entered, and our first public beta was 18 months ago at Google I/O 2017. Today, out of the top 1,000 applications in active development on Play Store, 798 are already using Jetpack. This is up from about 560 at Google I/O this year. Jetpack is used in many applications like New York Times, Kakao Talk, Duolingo, Evernote, Uber, SoundCloud, Pandora, Twitter, Dropbox, Viber, and many more. Apps built all over the world, in India, Germany, France, Korea, Israel, China, the US, and more. Also at I/O, we announced new libraries for paging, navigation, Work Manager, slices, and Kotlin extensions we just talked about. Although these are still in early phases of development, they are already being used in over 38,000 applications worldwide. And the evolution of those Android X libraries is driven in large part by the feedback we receive from you, the community. But we know that many of you have long expressed a desire to do more than simply give feedback. So that's why this summer, we moved all Android X development to public AOSP. You can now see features and bug fixes implemented in real time, and you can contribute to any of the Android X libraries. All you need is Android Studio and the public SDK. And we also want to use AOSP as a place where we can experiment and prototype new ideas. And our hope is that earlier access to Android features will help us refine and help ship even better libraries. So please join us. With Jetpack, we introduced two app architecture component libraries, Navigation and Work Manager. The Navigation Architecture Component Library offers a simplified way to implement Android's navigation principles in your application using a single activity. These solutions give you consistent animations across devices, atomic navigation operations, and easier animated transitions. Work Manager makes it easy to perform background tasks in the most efficient manner possible. You do not need to wonder whether you should be using Job Dispatcher, Job Scheduler, or Alarm Manager. Work Manager will figure out which is the best solution given the application state and the device API level. These two libraries will become beta later this month, so if you have any feedback about those APIs, the engineering teams are here today and tomorrow, so now is the time to give us that feedback. We also introduced Android Slices, a new way to bring users to your applications. Slices are like a mini snippet to surface content outside of your application. This can help users book a flight, play a video, call a ride, and so on. Slices is another example where we want to be open very early, but we want to take the time to get things right. After working with several of you on the APIs, we're moving into public EAP at the end of the month with Duis, Kayak, and many other applications. We will run experiments surfacing slices in Google search results. And there's a session today with more info and best practices about building slices, so please check it out. Our team has also been hard at work bringing numerous improvements to existing Android X libraries. For instance, in paging 2.1, you have more control over memory usage, and it offers better Kotlin integration. Room 2.1 is our biggest feature launch since 1.0. We added full-text search tables, database views, better RxJava, and auto-value integration. Data binding 3.2 brings much faster multi-module compilation, and we expect further improvements in 3.4. And finally, view model lets you save state in OSP. One thing you told us worked really well was deeply integrating libraries and tools in Android. Constraint layout was one example. But a new great example of this is navigation. So in Android Studio 3.3, we have a new navigation editor to help you easily understand, visualize, and build a navigation flow in your application. So let's go straight to a demo of the navigation editor. So here I have an application that was already partially written, and you can already see the flow of navigation through the different screens of the application. So if I run the demo on the emulator, and we wait for Gradle to do its job, I can click on leaderboards, I can see different profiles, but if I click on the profile, nothing happens. I can go back to the editor, add a new screen, so I just select the fragment to view user profiles, and then I link the leaderboard screen to the user profile. I also need to add an argument for the selected user. And it's a string. I just rerun the app. Wait for Gradle. The tools team will probably want to chat with me after this. We go back to leaderboards, and if I click on the profile now, I can see the profile. But as I go back and forth between those two screens, you can see that there are no animations, no transitions. So if I go back to the editor and I select this navigation flow, I can choose which animations I want. So I'm going to choose the enter animations and the exit animations. And now, if I rerun the app one last time, go back to leaderboards, and now you can see this sliding transition. So if you want to play with the navigation, editor, all you have to do is download Android Studio from the beta channel today and get started. And as we expand the Android Jetpack libraries and tools together, we're focused on your feedback about the top problem areas that you encounter. So please let us know. We want to know about animations, UI, themes and styles, camera, anything else. We're here today, we're here tomorrow. You can tell us what you need from us. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Karen, who will let you know about our plans for Android Studio. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Karen. I'm on the team that builds Android Studio and Android Jetpack. So Romain and Jake just talked you through the language and library experiences. To build on top of that, I'm going to talk to you about productivity and what we're doing with Android Studio. For 3.2, we asked ourselves, what can we do to have a meaningful impact on productivity? And where do you spend the most of your time? We heard loud and clear, thanks Romain, that it's build speed. It's something that you do every day. He set me up. It's something you do every day, multiple times a day, and every minute that you're waiting for that build to finish, we know it's a minute wasted. So we took a deep look at our data to see what was going on, and we actually found two things to be true. The first thing we found was that build speeds in our opt-in data is actually getting slower over time. The second thing we found is that new releases of Studio are actually improving build times. In the last year and a half, we saw build speeds get faster by 42% on fresh projects. So something's going on, and we had to take a deeper look. Code bases are just getting larger. Custom plugins are adding to build times. Annotation processors that people use are negating the benefit of incremental build. New languages can add to compilation times, and if you have many modules, resource management can add time as well. The ecosystem and project growth are kind of outgrowing our build improvements. We are committed to making build faster. You'll find a large part of the team on build here this week to listen and learn and to tell you more about what we're doing. We want to get this right, and we need your help to do it. We're giving ourselves stretch goals. We're working on attribution tools to help you better understand what's impacting your build in your projects, and we're making Gradle and our first-party plugins faster. We also know that iteration speed is super important in app development because it's all about trying things out, iterating, and then failing fast, and then doing it again. With Instant Run, we want to fix what we started and quickly apply changes without losing the state of your app. Part of that apply changes is around deployment times. So we know they play a huge part, and we've just shipped an update in Android Pie where we're seeing a big difference in real-world and sample projects between Pie and Oreo. If you're using USB 3.0 versus USB 2.0, we've seen some times that seem close to that emulator speed. Please let us know if you're interested in giving us early feedback to get apply changes right. We're starting an EAP very soon. That takes us to emulators. Because we want to make iteration speed faster, we're investing in emulators for every OS. At I.O., we showed the ability to save a snapshot of your current state of your emulator and boot up and switch to any snapshot in under 2 seconds. Productivity is also about making the hard problems easier. We heard that it's really hard to see how your app is impacting battery life on the phone. So we built the new energy profiler in 3.2. You can now see wake locks, visualize the estimated battery usage of system components, and inspect background events that contribute to battery drain. The new beta for Android Studio 3.3 is available today and was just released moments ago. We know that in order for an IDE to be delightful and to keep you productive, it has to be not just stable, but it has to be rock-solid stable because of the number of hours that you spend there. The main focus for our next few releases will be quality, which we're calling Project Marble, reducing the number of crashes, hangs, and memory leaks, fixing user-impacting bugs, and investing in our infrastructure and tools. We know that sometimes we've missed memory leaks before we've shipped, so we're building tools to help detect those leaks before they even happen. Dave mentioned how millions of Android apps already run on Chromebooks. We're bringing the full power of Android Studio as an officially supported IDE to Chrome OS early next year. If you'd like to try it today, you can learn more at developer.android.com. Now I'd like to invite Matt Henderson up to share more about app size and what we're doing with the Android App Bundle.
Thanks, Karen, and hi, everybody. So I work on developer tools like the Play Console. And I wanted to start by talking about app size. Apps have grown dramatically in size. The average is up 5 times since 2012. But larger size carries a cost. It reduces the install conversion rate, and it increases uninstall rate. Now, you told us that using multi-APK to configure different app versions was a painful way to reduce app size. So the Android App Bundle makes it much simpler. Using the App Bundle, we reduce size by generating an APK for the languages, the screen density, the CPU architecture that each user needs. And it's working. While size reductions vary, on average, apps are seeing a 35% reduction in size compared to a universal APK. Now, with the recent stable release of Android Studio 3.2, app bundles in production have taken off. They're up 10 times. Thousands of developers have embraced app bundles, and the number of bundles in production now total billions of installs. And Google's apps, they're switching too. YouTube, Google Maps, Photos, Google News are all in production with app bundles today. Photos, for example, is now 40% smaller. So we're really excited about the app bundle's potential. We sign APKs for delivery to the end user. This is highly secure. We protect your key in the same memory, in the same storage we protect Google's own keys. This signing step is critical. It allows us to process the app bundle in order to generate the optimized APKs. And this, in turn, allows you to benefit from additional optimizations in the future, starting right now. So I'm happy to announce that the app bundle now supports uncompressed native libraries. This utilizes an existing Android platform feature that was little used because in the past, you would have had to use multi-APK for pre-M and post-M devices. Now, we just do it for you. With no additional developer work needed, the app bundle now makes apps using native libraries an average of 8% smaller to download and 16% smaller on disk for M+ devices. By adding dynamic feature modules to your app bundle, you can load any app functionality on demand instead of at install time. For example, you don't need to send that same big feature to 100% of your users if it's only going to be used by 10% of them. And you don't need to keep big features that are only used once. Dynamic features can be installed and uninstalled dynamically when your app requests them. Or you can choose to defer installing to a later time when the app goes to the background. Facebook was one of our launch partners, and they are using dynamic features in production in the main Facebook app and in Facebook Lite. For example, card scanning is a feature that only a small percentage of Facebook's user base is using. So moving it to a dynamic feature avoids it taking up almost 2 megabytes on each user's device. Within an app bundle, installed and instant apps can share the same base module and the same dynamic feature modules. So separating out functionality as a dynamic feature is a great way to get your base small enough to offer an instant app experience. Now, you can start building and testing dynamic features using Android Studio 3.2 today, and you can join our beta and become whitelisted to publish them to production. Now, I'd like to invite Aurash and Mahbod up to tell us more about app updates.
Good job. Awesome. Thanks, Matt. So yeah, we've heard your feedback that you'd like more control to ensure that users are running the latest and greatest version of your app. To address this, I'm excited to announce the Google Play in-app update API. The update API has 2 variants. The first is an immediate update flow, where the user is presented with a full screen experience. They can accept the update, have it downloaded and installed immediately before proceeding. Many of you have already implemented similar variants of this in your app, but this new streamlined implementation is less error-prone and super easy to integrate. Next is flexible updates. Flexible updates are really cool because they actually allow the update experience to be integrated into your app, and it feels far more customized. As an example, Google Chrome has opted to nudge users to update with a small affordance. If the user accepts that update, the download happens in the background, and the user can continue to use your app. When the download is complete, it's up to you as the developer to decide if you'd like the update to be applied immediately by presenting an affordance, or if you'd simply like the update to be applied the next time the app is in the background. Google Chrome is testing this now, and we're excited to be expanding the early access program coming soon. Next, Instant Apps. Instant Apps are now available on over 1.3 billion devices, helping more users discover your apps. We've been hard at work on simplifying the development experience for Instant Apps. Earlier this year, we increased the size limit for Instant Apps from 4 megabytes to 10 megabytes. And what we found is that just by using the Android app bundle, many developers are already able to get under that size limit without additional work. Additionally, the dynamic features that Matt mentioned earlier are also instant compatible, so you get 2-for-1 savings. We've also made it possible to now upload and test Instant Apps of any size. This allows you to both iterate on the user experience at the same time that you're optimizing for size. And we've also made web URLs optional. What this means is that you can now just take your existing Play Store deep link traffic and reroute those users into your instant experience automatically. And lastly, I'm excited to announce that today in Android Studio 3.3 beta, you can now have a single Android Studio project that houses both your instant and installed apps. This dramatically simplifies the development experience for instant apps. And additionally, the app bundle that's emitted by this project can be uploaded once to the Play Developer Console, dramatically simplifying release management as well. We're super excited about it. And with that, back to Steph.
Android's open source and scale means it's incredible to watch what you're building on top of the platform. With over 2 billion devices, 750 billion apps downloaded every year, and developers in 194 countries, Android's developer community is growing hugely. In countries like India and Brazil, we saw it more than double just in the past few years. So we're seeing innovation on Android worldwide. Android's not a conventional operating system in how we work with developers. We want to get your input in our GDE community, in open source collaborations like the Kotlin Foundation. And we want to be open in new places like our Medium developer channel. It's by developers, for developers, to share more technical behind the scenes. Today and tomorrow, about 500 members of the team are here. We'll have over 30 sessions of technical content. It's live streamed and on YouTube, so the whole community can participate. We feel lucky to be a part of it. So that's it for the keynote. Thank you. I hope you enjoy Android Dev Summit.